Hello and welcome. My name is Richard Miller, and you've arrived at Never Not Here. And what a great thing, the internet and all our technologies and all our connections. And we can find that we can be as close to someone on any part of the world, in any corner of the world, as we are to someone in any corner of our city. And it's like totally amazing, you know. And what are we finding? You know, we're finding that there's so much of me all around. So it's not that different. It's not different. When you really look at the essence and when you really see that people all over wish me well. And I'm able to wish them well. And that's a pretty amazing discovery when we used to think that even our little city we're scared to go into this zone or that zone, and we're thinking that we all have different interests and somehow hoping to get through this life with something intact. Whether we need it to be intact or not, I don't know. Maybe it should fall down. And today I'm really lucky. I'm talking to the other side of the world, and what we call down under up here. I don't know what the folks down there call it. And please help me welcome Sri Guru Shakti Durga. Hello, Shakti.
Hello, Richard. How are you?
I'm really pleased to reach so far, distance-wise, and really get to know you.
Likewise.
As humanity, it seems like we're pretty willing to explain problems. You know, there's something not quite right, and looks like at the root of it is we have a strong belief that something's missing. And how do we get that belief? I mean, either we have a memory where we say that something wasn't missing, or somebody told us a story, or, you know, which means like we read a book or imbibed in a tradition, or somehow we're looking to understand what that missing thing is, and then we actually have another belief that says I could fix it, or maybe I could add that in to the mix. Right, and whether any of that is founded or not, this is what we're trying to find out. You know, after long years of believing it, something's missing, and I can fix it. And that's really.
Yeah, I think that you're talking about the dynamics of the creative ethos. I think that. That which is imperfect is the catalyst to want us to take action and to dream something better into existence. And I think that you're right, that we can use our thoughts to do this, our beliefs, and that we are sometimes hamstrung by beliefs that we don't even realize that we have. We so take our beliefs for granted that it's a bit like a fish living in the ocean. It probably takes the ocean for granted and thinks it just is.
Right.
Never really thinks about the water that it's swimming in. And I think we're the same with our beliefs. We're swimming around in them all the time. They're impulsing us and they're sending us triggers and signals. And we don't know that these things are really, in some ways, controlling us.
So how does that work? I mean, is there anything you can say about it? Because, I mean, they got to be here, right? Because they're actually active. And
they are active.
And we're not noticing them, right?
Correct. I think for me, when I look at reality through the lens that I've been trained to look through, I don't just look at the physical world anymore. And instead, I look at 5 different dimensions that exist within a human being and within the world. And each of them has different rules and laws. And each of them can be negotiated by us in a way that's either skillful or unskillful. A lot of the time we don't even know that that's what we're engaging with, and so it's very hard to be skillful when we've got no idea what the playing field is. So would it be okay if I just share with you the way I look at where thoughts fit in terms of these 5 dimensions that I teach about?
No, absolutely, absolutely. But
Mm,
also say, like if they're metaphorical or, I mean, everything in a
mm.
way is a thought, right? And we're going to express some thoughts now. And then
Yeah. Well,
it seems like they're practical thoughts, right? Because they give us some
yeah.
kind of, they guide people, right? And so then you can
Mm.
explain all of it, exactly what they are, but also how they're useful and how the
How they're
story
useful.
how the story
Yeah.
builds too.
Sure. Well, to me, I probably wouldn't agree that everything's just a thought or that everything's a belief. I think that beliefs and thoughts exist in one of the dimensions, which I call it the astral dimension. And there is where we do our thinking. So right now, as you're thinking about what I'm saying, the thought forms that are coming up in your mind are existing within this dimension of the astral field. And not only your thoughts and beliefs, but the people next door, the people up the road from you, the other citizens of Chicago, and in fact, all of the people who are of our language, uh, because it's hard to think in another language, you know what I mean? If you know different languages, one can think differently in different languages. The thought forms are different, but we're impacted by all of these different things, and that's one dimension. Let me just outline the others. Of course, there's the physical dimension that we know as you can bang a nail into a wall. That's the physical dimension. Sitting between the physical dimension and the astral dimension I've just spoken of is a dimension we call the etheric dimension, which is the dimension of energy. And so here we look at the kinds of things that an acupuncturist or a chiropractor would be working on, the energy meridians that run through the body. And we look at the chakras as well, which is a kind of an Eastern concept to some. But if you've ever looked at ancient Western religious icons and artwork, you'll see images of a golden glow around the head of Jesus or the heart of Jesus. And these are images of the chakras. So they've been known in both the East and the West for a long time. These things are not the same as thoughts or beliefs. These things are like the hardware, I suppose, that we have on a computer. And the thoughts and beliefs to me are somewhat like the software. And we can change the software and we can upgrade our thoughts and our patterns of belief so that we can get better outcomes just if we as we can if we put a more powerful piece of software on a computer. But there comes a point where our computer is no longer capable of dealing with this software because the computer's now a bit outdated.
Oh,
It
yeah.
doesn't have.
Could I
It
ask a
doesn't
question or
have.
two?
Sure, sure.
Just to kind of really get clarity, because like
Yeah,
the astral is where the thoughts were, the physical
yeah.
is the hammer and the nail, and the energy is in between them, right?
Well, they all interpenetrate each other, and I guess I'm trying to break down reality into 5 different segments in the same way that a medical specialist breaks down the body into different systems to try and understand it. But at the end of the day, you have to treat the whole thing, and the whole thing is one entity, just as our body is one entity. So all of these different dimensions also interpenetrate each other, and one cannot really separate one from the other, except insofar as we can learn about them. But then what we have to do is dance with all of them together.
Right. So in other words, I guess it just came to me that in order to hammer the nail in the wall, I needed some energy. So then I wanted that energy to be more
Absolutely.
first or something like that. But and it's okay. That's just
Yeah.
all. That's all. You could just go ahead because I mean I think it's
Okay.
useful because there is
Yes.
there is a place that's outside our thoughts. It's before our thoughts and I mean you can say that's a place. Even though maybe it isn't, and maybe there's no
Yeah.
placeness or location to it. But I mean it's
Exactly.
a concept that is useful.
Sure. And the other 2 dimensions that I talk about are the dimension of our soul, and finally the divine dimension, which is to me the essence of all things and is kind of like a void. But let me start with the soul for a moment. I actually believe that uh, if you look at the physical dimension, clearly we're all different from each other and we have different strengths, different weaknesses. If we look in the dimension of energy, the etheric dimension, then we can tell by scanning, which is, we're trained to be able to perceive the chakras and the energy field. We can see the differences between people if we look at their energy field. If one could clairvoyantly look into the mind of another person, we would all be very, very different from each other. And even at the level of the soul, There's your soul, there's my soul, and there's everyone else's soul, you know. So we're still not in unity at this stage. But the soul, I think, is a part of us that is often ignored in modern education, modern commerce, and our culture as a whole doesn't really pay a lot of attention to the soul and seems to have relegated that as some kind of superstitious nonsense that sprang up from a more primitive time. I think that we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater by having that belief. The soul exists whether we believe in it or not. And to me, the soul is that yearning that exists within us, which I think you were referring to earlier, that yearning for something to be better, that there should be a something where at the moment there's a nothing. I see this a lot when we treat people with depression. And if you see someone with depression, then clairvoyantly what's happened to them is that all of their chakras have closed down and the spirit is not active within their hardware, which is their chakras. And so what happens when the base chakra closes down? The person feels ungrounded and impractical. If the sex chakra closes down, we lose our libido. If the navel chakra closes down, we feel bad about ourselves and we also feel powerless. If the heart chakra closes down, it's very hard to feel love and to extend love to others. When the throat chakra closes down, communication becomes almost impossible. And when the chakra between the eyebrows, the Ajna chakra, when it closes down, we lose our big picture vision of where our life is heading and we feel very confused. And when the crown chakra on the top of their head, when it closes down, we feel very lost and alone and as though there is no God to call upon and we've lost our connection really. We haven't totally lost it, but it feels like we have. And so when we systematically open the chakras back up again, what happens is we call it igniting the spirit of a person. And we just literally move out all of the debris, much of which is thought-based debris that sits in there, like old programs that really need to be cleaned off your computer, if you understand the imagery there. And so what happens is people seem to come back to life again from their depressed state. And we've even done some scientific studies on our methodology and shown that even seriously depressed people can be brought back into a fulsome life where they're happy and they're fulfilled and all their chakras are working, all their functions are back again. And it depends upon lots of other factors as to how quickly that happens. Sometimes it happens in a matter of days with some of our patients, sometimes months. That's about the usual is a couple of months to kick the habit of depression, which is it is when our spirit has closed down on us. So our medical
Let me ask a few things about that, because
yeah, sure.
Okay, spirit is you said it was relegated to religion or to beliefs from before, and it sounds like spirit is an animating force but also an individuating force, because you're saying that the spirit is different for different individuals. And so then it's kind of like okay, then when the spirit is shut down, the chakras are shut down. But many times I can see two things I don't really see the spirit, so I'm unless I'm attuned to it, let's say. And so then two places where I could see that a pattern is picked up. One is by imitation. Just we imitate each other. You could say we reflect each other. I mean, you could say that we are in resonance with each other. I mean, especially if we're a newborn child, we're in resonance with our parents and with our family and and then sooner or later our school and of course our grandparents and uncles and so on. And those people that have different, all those people have a different, you could call it chakras, but I mean they got a different strategy of how to deal with the world. Like some might say, "Oh, I'm angry at everybody," and I'm going to try to force them. Others might say, "I'm frustrated with everybody," and then gradually, they have less energy because then I'm just resigned with everybody, and then that's less energy, and then finally I'm just totally depressed and I can't even move.
Yes.
And then, in a lot of ways, that could be just a reflection of your surroundings, and who knows what your surroundings are, because we could say your physical surroundings, but also like your generational surroundings that somehow are, who knows where space and time start and end, and you could go that way. And then
I agree.
each one of those also has a kind of a story that goes with it. Because like if you have a belief that says, I'm the disadvantaged person, and we're in a minority race here, and we've never, ever been favored in any way, and somehow we're victimized again and again and again, then you don't have a lot of belief that something could be different, and
True.
then that's a depression too, just by the story.
Absolutely.
And so then each one of those could either be the effect of the chakras being closed down or the cause too. I mean, it could go both ways.
That is true.
Because if
it can go both ways.
if you change the story, you can open things, or you're just doing energy work, as I assume. I'm just assuming. I don't know, And
one of the parts of what we do is energy work, definitely. But whether it's Genesis or Revelations when it comes to what's in your chakras, at the same time, you can clean it out. And it doesn't have to sit there, and you don't have to be a victim to your race or your minority or your socioeconomic stratum. You can change. And change is affected more rapidly by working on the energy field than on the mind by itself, in my experience. And I've been watching and learning and treating people now for 20 plus years, and have treated many thousands of people for a whole range of issues, from financial problems to relationship problems to people who just come to me and say, look, I feel like there should be something more in my life, but I don't know what it is, and I feel like I'm missing something. And that was actually my story, because, I was a trial attorney for a long time. For nearly 20 years, I practiced law. And then what happened was, I had the lifestyle that one would go to university to attain, and wonderful real estate and great holidays and fabulous restaurants and, the whole thing. And yet I felt that there was something that I couldn't put my finger on that was missing. And at that stage, I didn't really have any spiritual practices. I wasn't religious. I'd been brought up as a Catholic, but it didn't really suit me. And as a teenager, I really rebelled against that tradition. But it left a big hole. And it took another 10 years before I was able to work out that there was even something to fix, and it took the end of my first marriage and becoming very, I suppose, I was at my wit's end. I didn't know what to do with myself. If any of your listeners have been through divorce, perhaps they understand what I'm talking about. It's a very rough time. And so I sort of, at one of my colleagues, who was a barrister as well, said to me that I should go and learn meditation, go and fix yourself up, he was saying to me. And I thought, yeah, I feel like I need fixing. And so I went along, and I was pretty skeptical. I didn't really expect much. But these kind people that I ended up studying with really changed my life and taught me some tools that I use to this day. And the meditation was fabulous. And it just, it struck a chord with me and started a passion that's never diminished all this time. But I guess I'm digressing a little bit, but I know that back in those days, my energy field was very shut down compared to now. And I've had the good fortune to study with some extraordinary gurus in different parts of the world, and they've imparted to me some extraordinary wisdom that has helped me to understand my life and what's going on, and to solve problems in my life, and to help other people solve those same problems in their life. And it's been a very enriching experience. And whilst I got into it because life was so hard, I had to do something. Now that is not my motivation. My motivation is the bliss and the joy and the ecstasy that I continually experience, and to share that with others, and to multiply bliss and multiply ecstasy with others, and to have so much love in my life, which I do now. I just feel like I must be the luckiest person in the world, that my job is fabulous and I get to hang out with truly amazing people. And I figure if I can turn my life around from being pretty depressed, and I had postnatal depression as well, which I didn't know I had. And if I can go from that to the sort of life that I have now, then I just think there's hope, for people who might be listening to this program and thinking, I can't get away from my problems, and you can. And we have plenty of people who've done it too. So it's possible.
let me ask this, it sounds like, because I mean, I guess my next, I proposed that changing your story could also change the openness of your energy, right? And in
Yep.
fact, everything you say, in a way, somehow impacts you energetically, because otherwise we would not be feeling beings.
Yeah,
And so then,
that's true.
yeah.
Mm.
So everything, every last thing that comes in these holes here, the ears and eyes
Mm.
and our senses,
Sure.
somehow impacts our unit, like our
Yes,
instrument. And
absolutely.
so then I was saying, well, changing the story would be one way, and well, changing the reflection would be another way, or getting in
Sure.
another group or something like that.
Yeah.
And then
I think,
you were talking about opening the chakras, and so then from there I
yeah,
wanted to ask, like, okay, let's say you just go, and you were saying that opening the chakras seems to be more effective than working with the mind, and of course you could do both too at the same time.
we do both.
Yeah.
We do both. But what we find is that the mind is very determined to think what it's always thought, and it needs a circuit breaker to break those old patterns. And that's where working on the energy field, we can literally erase thought forms from people's mind using energy, literally erase it so that the person can't even remember what they were thinking. Uh, and then we give them an affirmation that's positive. And if we were just using our minds to do that, we couldn't. We use energy as well. But I would like to say, Richard, that I think that there's something that's even more potent that we haven't spoken about yet. And it's something that you cannot dissect or bang a nail into. And this is that I think that we have laws, natural law, which I like this bit because, being a lawyer, I like this. But I much prefer to talk about natural law than man-made law. And to me, natural law includes concepts such as you sow, you will reap. The law of karma. Whatever you do is going to happen back to you. Just wait long enough and it will happen. That is a law that exists to me, whether we believe in it or not. So to me, belief is less potent than these laws. Another law is the law of, let me think, the law of flow, or if we give, then the universe sooner or later is going to give back to us, which is why the ancients used to engage in practices like tithing, because they knew at a deep level that it wasn't enough just to make a heap of money and keep it for yourself, but to give it to help others and to do good works, to serve other people, the law of service, that as we serve others, so it is in our hour of need. And boy, don't we all have those, at some stage in our life, that there'll be helping hands to help us when we really need it. And there is a thing we can develop called grace. And I think grace is something that evolves inside of us and is part of our soul rather than being part of our mind. Although when we have grace, our mind will probably operate at a higher octave and at a higher vibration than when we really need to develop some more grace. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, okay, let me say this about the laws, I mean, are these
Yeah.
things, so we're going to point to these laws so that we can notice them because they're operating, right? They must be
They are.
operating. And so then if they're operating and it doesn't seem to affect us, or we never noticed it, we're not noticing them, right? And so then we can
Correct.
point to them
Yeah.
in order to help notice them. But in one way,
Exactly.
then we're waiting for those things to kick in, right? And we're trying to
Yeah.
notice them, and we're saying, well, it doesn't seem to be working, So,
Yeah.
but in another way, they become way more authentic when they're discovered, when it's kind of like a discovery and
Absolutely.
not necessarily somebody else pointing to them or saying, hey, you should start to flow and start
Yeah.
giving away your money, and then I'll be waiting
Yeah.
for when it's going to come back to me, right?
Yeah. But another one is the law of forgiveness. That's one Jesus talked a lot about. And, when we have situations in life, and I think everybody does, things happen and we get into relationship issues with people that are very difficult to sort out, and people hurt our feelings, and it's very hard sometimes, particularly if dreadful things happen. It's hard to forgive someone who has messed up your life or
Well, how
hurt you
does it
badly.
happen that, like, this is pretty well universal, I guess, is when something
Mm,
happens, we're trying to see who did it,
that's
who
right.
should we
And it's,
blame, and why,
yeah,
where did that ever come from? It's
it
normal,
came
but
from the
it's
fact,
not natural, right?
that's my feeling. I feel like at a soul level, we ourselves are the author of all things that ever occur in our existence. And this is not meant to cast blame on us. It's just to go, that's interesting. You know, how did I co-create that, and why? And so what we're interested in doing is empowering people so that they can answer those questions in a way that is effective. And by effective, I mean that they develop a better peace within inside themselves, more empowerment to deal with the situation, whatever that is, that they are more empowered in relationships with others, and that through our empowerment within relationships and within ourselves, we actually get to play our part in creating peace in the whole world. And so this multi-dimensional map that we kind of look at regularly, we think it's inside of ourselves. It's in you, it's in me, and it's in everyone who's listening. And so if things aren't working when we're using our affirmations and trying to change things mentally, then perhaps the issue is not there. Perhaps the issue actually exists in another dimension of who we are. Perhaps we need to forgive our ex-husband or our ex-wife or the guy who cheated us in business. Perhaps we really need to look at the fact that when we hold these grudges inside of our heart chakra, which they can be clairvoyantly observed, so it's real stuff we're talking about, it's almost like saying, I'm going to take poison and I want you to drop dead. To me, that's what it's like when we hold a grudge. And when we release that grudge and actually forgive the person, we feel so much better. We actually feel so light and so free, and energy surges through us and life starts to change. And I've seen this in my own life, and I've seen it in the lives of many other people too that come to our Shana Mission Harmony centers.
So that is really important to say, because it's like a double payback, you know. We're talking about the idea that maybe by forgiving someone, the whole relationship will get healed. But mostly it's the poison in yourself that you don't need all that, you know. That's just killing you. And so,
that's it.
And then the whole thing, when I was asking, like, why is it that we're always searching for who done it, who did it, you know? We love a mystery novel. And
we do.
And we want to blame them, you know? We're going to blame that. The butler did it.
That's it. But you see, we've been blaming each other for centuries. In fact, for millennia, we've been blaming people for what's happening to us. And religions blame each other. Governments blame each other. Individuals blame each other. Mothers blame daughters and fathers blame sons, or, you know, whatever's going on. And it's
well, we all blame our parents, aren't we? We're all blaming our parents because we said we grew up in a weird way, you know, and why did that happen, you know? And then we try to say, oh, they did the best they can, forgive them.
Yeah, that's it. And, you know, a friend of mine reckons that you can do your best as a parent, and it doesn't matter when you grow up, your kids are still going to be in therapy and they're still going to be blaming you. So just do your best and relax.
Let me just sink back into one thing I was saying, you know, and see, just to bring out a point. Because so then we were talking about, well, you know, why your chakras shut down. And we were saying on the soul level, they shut down. And then I was giving these examples, like we're reflecting those that are around us and where we grew up. And we have a story, which we're also reflecting. And then that kind of shuts us down because it's a story of no opportunity, right? And then I wanted to mention that sometimes people are awakened and they actually can share some real clarity, and they can also share some amazing, surprising experiences, let's say. And yet they have a similar personality as before, and they might even say and share that it doesn't change anything really. It just sees that I'm not it, but that functioning is still happening. That personality is still going, and so basically the story has not deconstructed or altered, you know, how to react with different parts of the world, right? And so then I want to ask you two things out of that. One, I wanted to ask you is, when you do energy work on chakras and open them up, and you said it takes a couple of months, do people develop a new story? That's number one. And number two, when you shared about yourself and that you're in bliss all the time, your story just fried, and you don't even have a particular story. I'm wondering, you know, that's my guess. It just is not that important to have a story. But I mean, it's kind of like important to deconstruct the old one, isn't it?
There's so many ways one could answer that question. I think one's story is part of one's sacredness. And I think that whether it's a horror movie or a comedy or a tragedy or whatever it is that is our story, that there is some reason that our soul chose to incarnate us into that. And so part of the journey of living a purposeful life for me is to work out, well, why? Why is this happening? And that's the journey. Sometimes we've got to meditate on that. You know, there's lots of different ways. But for me, getting through it involved finding some really, really good teachers that I trusted that could jumpstart me out of where I was to have a much more positive outlook, to have more tools than I'd had before. And when I worked with the gurus in Bali, the Philippines, and India, they would just jumpstart you. They would give you a thing called Shakti Pat, and this was the capacity to transmit spiritual energy through the energy field of the person who looked to them for spiritual guidance. And that is my job now. That's what I do. And it is a beautiful thing because it's like the divine blessing the divine with divine. So there's certainly a lot of grace in it, and it changes people's lives really, really quickly, because the dimension that we haven't yet spoken of is the divine dimension. So it exists in a most powerful way that's even beyond where the soul is existing, and it's inside every cell of our being is this voidal energy that is, there's no thought in it, there's no kinetic energy in it, everything's in potential. It's just in a latent state of bliss and ecstasy, and it is inside us. And it's like there's this giant cosmic party going on that we're all invited to, where we're all in bliss and ecstasy all the time, but we didn't know we were invited. And truly for me, spirituality and spiritual development has been the realization of that that bliss that's just there all the time. And we can still feel emotions, we can still have thoughts, but they run over the top of this bliss that is never really made absent because of whatever else is going on in the surface. And so that's possible for us all to live in a much different way to how we are now.
Is it worthwhile to say that these realms are sort of nested, that somehow one is inside the other? And does it matter what order they're in? Or, I mean, some orders seem obvious maybe, and some maybe
for me it's about the voltage of them. So the divine is just the biggest voltage that we have in that nest of dimensions. So it's the vastest. And then next in voltage is our soul. Our soul is so much more powerful than our mind, in my experience. And so when we tap into the soul's potential, we're able to jumpstart ourselves out of the ruts of thought that have held us imprisoned and enthralled for a very long time. We can actually erase them. We can erase the functioning of the mind that doesn't serve us in a strategic way and through grace. And we can change what goes on in our mind. So our mind is very powerful as well, but not as powerful as the soul. And then the energy field is very dependent upon what the mind's doing. So it's kind of less powerful again. And then the physical dimension of who we are, to me, is a lot to do with results rather than causes of most of our life. That if you can start to understand what's going on in your energy field, in your mind, in your soul, and what is the divine imperative here, if you can start to look at those four things, then what's going on in your physical life can be understood in an entirely different way. And it gives us a sense of hope, optimism, and that we can do something about this. And a lot of the things that we do in Shanti Mission is we take areas of life that we all experience and that none of us are too happy about. And for instance, I'm not sure if it's the same in your country, but in our country, there is a general dissatisfaction with the way the political process operates, with the way that politicians speak to each other, with the lack of respect that one party will have for the other party. And I believe that every political process is a reflection of the people who vote people in, you know, in some way we get what we vote in. But at the same time, wouldn't it be marvelous if we could change the mass consciousness where politics is concerned, and instead of the outcome being, oh, well, you know, there's all those people doing their thing and it's got nothing to do with me and I don't like what they're doing, but it'll never change, which I think, I don't know, is this part of the philosophy in your country or
my
not?
God, it has been, even in me, you know. I mean, you know, because somehow that seems to be our right, is to disengage.
Yeah.
That's a more
So yeah,
bigger than the right to vote is the right to disengage, and more
sure.
of us exercise it. And the
Yeah,
U.S. is one of the worst countries as far as poll turnout,
yeah.
and
Right.
we're all
Mm.
pretty darn sure that there's no difference from one to the other, and it's not even worth researching. I mean, you're
Yeah, well,
really true.
yeah.
What you're saying
So
is
what I
totally true.
so what yeah, so what we try and do about that is we're getting groups of people to meditate together to clear up the thought forms that exist about the political process and open ourselves to there being a joy-filled, wise, loving group of people running our country. And so this is a project that I expect to be a project that might take 10 years for us to see really amazing results. But it takes the tenacity of spiritual aspirants who are willing and committed to work on a large project for a long time and see things happen. So, at a more local level, we had a bunch of incredible people who are energetic healers and therapists of different kinds and spiritual people in one of our cities here in New South Wales that was an industrial city that was losing its identity as much of our manufacturing was closing down, and the city was becoming depressed about itself because it was feeling that, well, what was it going to do? So a bunch of us started to meditate about how this would be a city of spirit and a city of healing and a city of grace and light. And that and recently the Newcastle Council, who knew nothing about what we were doing, decreed that the centre of the city would become a wellness, health and spirituality precinct. So, you might say, hey, that's just a coincidence, and hey, it might be, but we have coincidences like this happening all the time in Shanti Mission. We start working on something and then we just wait and we're patient and we keep doing the practices that are for the good of, we perceive it to be of a high vibrational calling, and then whammy, there it goes. And it's for everybody. It's not just for our organisation. We believe that this is really going to help Newcastle. And I'm just trying to give you an example of what you
No,
can
that's
do.
a beautiful example, and
Yeah,
I wouldn't say that it would take 10 years because I think things are getting so shocking, so
yeah,
shockingly out of balance that I think
yes,
we're on a spiral that's
sure.
and people are just naturally waking up to the horror of it, when you're talking
Yeah.
about trillions of
Mm,
dollars just vaporized. And
yeah.
okay, in the U.S., 14 million homes have been repossessed. So that's
Mm,
like 50 million people have been put out. I don't know if
mm,
they're on the street, they're in their parents' homes, or they're in an apartment or something like that, or maybe they
mm.
never should have been in a home. Whatever. But I mean, it's kind of like a shocking thing to say.
It
A
is.
couple of our states,
Mm.
you could just say we just had a war and we lost, and they took over that territory. And
Yeah,
nobody noticed.
absolutely.
Nobody noticed,
Yeah,
right? Because we were
yeah,
into our resignment and our saying that it'll never change, and we don't need to look there. And these are really dangerous things that we've all got into, saying that
mm,
we're powerless and we're victimized and
mm.
we're and
Yeah,
what you're doing is an amazing, valuable,
yeah.
insightful initiative.
Yeah. So we've got initiatives like that working with our health system, with our education system, with business. As there was a movie that was once made called The Corporation, and it was the basic premise of this movie was that if a corporation was an individual, because at law they are, but that individual would be a psychopath. That there isn't a lot of morality. There's not a lot of kindness and caring in your average corporate ethos. It's dog eat dog, and how can I take your market share and and so we're working on the thought forms about business as well to try and bring in a new vibration of business that will assist everybody. And we seek to operate from a cooperative mode of business rather than from a competitive mode of business. And we have Shani Mission Harmony Centres now in 9 different cities within Australia. And it's one of the fastest growing spiritual organisations in Australia. And the reason is because we practice what we preach. We look at these 5 dimensions. Whenever we have a problem, we think, okay, which dimension's it in? And we get set and we move with the tools that we know about to help work within each of those dimensions. And things move and things improve. And so all of our staff are, told that if they can't, if they're hitting up against a brick wall, we expect them to stop and meditate. That is part of their job, is to bring in the divine energy and to use our healing techniques to clear whatever it is they're working on, and to ask the divine to make it work at a higher voltage than it's working at now. And the results are spectacular. And we think that this is the beginning of a new era in spiritual business. And, you know, we are an abundant business. And one of the reasons we're so abundant is that we practice the law of flow. We give as an institution, and we only ever charge people by donation to come to any of our seminars, because we're here to spread tools for peace and empowerment rather than to, make shareholders rich. We are a charity, and we believe that it's a wonderful form of business that can help change the world, that if we start looking at what can I give instead of what can I take from this situation. And we've got 40 or so paid staff, and we pay them, and we always seem to have enough funds to make whatever needs to happen in Shanti Mission happen. And our cash flow has grown dramatically year to year, and so forth. And I'm sharing this with you just to try and give the idea that what I'm speaking about is not airy-fairy stuff. We are putting our money where our mouths are. We're walking our talk and making things happen. And I just want your listeners to know that they can make a difference. Every single person who's listening to this or watching this podcast is able to make a difference in their life. All they have to do is decide they're going to, and then learn some tools so that they can. And they will.
That's an amazing story, and it's kind of like my main interest, because one of my main kind of gongs that I'm always banging on is like engagement. I've learned so much from engagement, and feel that I've left so much of my life awash, with disengagement.
Yeah.
And so then I didn't really respect, I didn't respect the institutions, I didn't respect the community, and I didn't respect myself. I didn't respect myself, my place in as an important part of the mechanism. I didn't respect my importance. And okay, we can say, well, I don't respect the politicians, but somehow I respect what you're planning in society is the respect of the process of getting along together and actually healing the process. Where the institutions are broken, and you're so well grounded in it as a former attorney. You're specialized in how our agreements with each other, and how to respect those agreements. And mostly, like you're saying, that corporations are ruthless and stuff, and most of their energy is to peer into all the laws and find out where's the little space that what's the maximum I can go in this direction, and what's the maximum I can go in that. And they didn't really tell me I couldn't do that. So then they're spending so much time on figuring out how to be the most, I don't know what.
So what we're trying to be also very clear that we don't want to judge anyone for what they're doing. We're just trying to look at what is and go, well, that's fascinating. How have we co-created that as a culture? And I'm part of that culture. So my energy is in this creation. I'm going to take my energy out of that creation and I'm going to put it in something else. So I don't believe in anarchy either. We need social institutions, and we need to understand the process of evolution, because we want this to be a peaceful change to an empowered, what I would call a golden age, where people are their authentic spiritual selves. And to me, spiritual aspirants are at their best when they're taking the heavenly energy that prayer and meditation can join us up with, and then they're bringing it into their life, and they're walking it and being practical, grounded people who are making a difference in the world. So that's the brand of sort of spirituality that we're there with. And so we have people of all religions, all different backgrounds, all nationalities coming to our centres. And what we're looking at is, what have we got in common? What tools have you got from your religion that we might not know about? Oh, that's great. Well, we'll utilize that because that's fabulous. And we just move along together and get things done. And so we're not against anything. We just decide to choose the highest choice we can in any interaction. whether it's personal or professional. And we just try and be love on legs, in everything that we're doing. And some days you do it really well, and other days you don't do it so well, and some days you're skillful, and other days you're not so skillful. But it's like any practice, whether you're practicing law or practicing as an actor or an accountant or whatever, it's a practice. And there are days when you just zing, like practicing golf, and and you swing it and it just hits that ball and it's so sweet and it's perfect. And then you go out the next day and it seems like every single thing you hit goes into a dam or a bunker, And I think that spiritual practice is like that too. And it's just stay on the horse. If you fall off, get on again, and just do your best.
So you're saying you're not against anything, but maybe I took it to mean you're not against anyone or anybody's behavior, But in a way, we can see that some of the rules are distorted and they're out of balance. Or
Absolutely.
They're maybe out of balance for how we've grown, what way we've grown. And one is business has gotten so big, that it's divorced itself from the community. And even with a profit motive, at one time, business was totally in one community, even if it was a big community like Sydney. But they wanted everything to be good in that community, and they depended on the labor force of that community, and they wanted the education to be best in that community, and they had to live there themselves, so they wanted it to be a peaceful and a pleasant place to live. And then somehow when business got so big that they had businesses in 100 communities, then they got the idea that we could hold these communities at ransom with each other, and say, look, if you don't do what I say, we're pulling out of here and we're going to go to that one,
Absolutely.
And so then that's kind of the rules that allow all that. And you can't really blame a person if you sit him down at a Monopoly board and say, let's play this game. And if he plays it better than you, you can't really blame him and say you shouldn't have played so good. We should just say the rules are distorted now.
Yeah, sure. And I think it's not only the black letter law, but I think it's also the morality and the ethics that we need to, I think, just expect more. And we need to respect ourselves more so that the reflection, remember you talked about the reflection of what is, that which is inside us gets reflected into the world. So as we can spiritually empower people to actually believe in themselves, to have good self-esteem, to respect themselves, the reflection in the world then will be that all kinds of things will change. And it just takes people power. And that people power is one person at a time believing in themselves more today than they did yesterday. And I don't mean in an arrogant way. I mean just in a humble belief in self, and things, energy shifts. It doesn't take two people in a relationship to change for the relationship to change. It only takes one. We see that all the time at the Harmony Centre, one person will come along because their marriage isn't so great. We teach them a bunch of tools. They change the way they do things, and suddenly their partner, who's been driving them crazy for 10 years, is being kind and considerate and beautiful, and they haven't done any personal development work. They haven't given up any weekends to come and learn all this stuff. They get a free ride because their partner's done it.
So we're saying that your belief structure today is a little bit more open and more liberating than it was yesterday. And so then, is that what I was saying? Because I was trying to say the story changes or deconstructs or somehow softens
Yeah, I think my experience has been that I'm happier now in more situations than I would have been before. And I see that as it's the byproduct of spiritual development, is that you just find more peace in more things. Less stuff upsets you than used to. And so if all of us could get to a stage where only half the things that upset us now upset us in the future, then imagine what that would do for the world. Imagine what that would do for our culture and for intercultural things that go on in the world. And so for me, I'm just going to keep sort of banging away, trying to get people a bit happier than they were yesterday and a bit more empowered in relationships than they were yesterday and a bit more in tune with their spirit than they were. And I believe that, light workers all over the world are doing that. And I think there is a change occurring. And that change is, you can see it in new forms of entertainment that are coming to us, new forms of cultural norms that are happening. I think that the arts and culture takes up new ideas faster than perhaps other segments of the community do. And, an example of that is the Bodhi Festival that we're about to be holding in in New South Wales, in Newcastle, where we've got some of the finest spiritual teachers, yogis, and sacred music artists from all over the world coming. And, you know, everyone's invited. It's going to be an international event. It'll be an annual event. And I think things like this are popping up all over the place, giving people real options, that they're not stuck with the old forms of things, that new forms are coming into our life, and we can choose to participate and to vote with our feet and be part of this new thing that's happening.
I love that, choose to participate, because, you know, that's kind of my beef with a lot of spirituality, because when you notice that you're not your thoughts, you're not your feelings, and then it might be said or believed that, oh, I should be that way. You know, I should just be spaciousness because I don't need any thoughts or feelings. And then, of course, you're not really participating. You're not really voting with your feet. You know, you're more or less voting with your meditation cushion. And, you know, if you're doing Vipassana, staring at a white wall or something like that, right? And it doesn't seem like that's really what our planet Earth is asking for now, to me. I mean, it wants you to know that you're more than just your problems, but it also wants you to, I don't know, am I going too far?
Yeah. Well, I'd like to comment on that, because I actually think that what you're talking about is transcendence, which is when we pop out of our usual mind state and we go into a state of bliss, and we are not our thoughts and our problems or our body at that stage. In fact, it's very hard to know you have a body when you're in a transcended state. And a lot of people would like to hang out there all the time because life is beautiful. But the thing is, for me, it's about grabbing that and pulling it back down into your life so that you can utilize it in your relationships, how to parent your children, how to do your gardening better than yesterday, how to be at work and with your colleagues at work better than you could yesterday. And truly, Love on Legs just summarizes it all for me. And I don't think it's very easy to do if you don't go into those transcendent states. I think that meditation and prayer that take us beyond the mind into a transcendent state is like oxygen for our soul. And so that we need to do that regularly so that we can change things. What we're technically doing when we're joining up with that divine energy is that we're bringing more voltage in. And a lot of people can find when they first start getting into this work that additional voltage shines a light on themselves and their life in such a way that things can look worse before they get better. You know, you can see the problems that you could hide from yourself before.
Oh, yeah, we used to deny it. And then now we're saying, okay, well, maybe that's not so bad. Let me let it up. Oh, wow, no, it's not like that, is it?
Yeah. And that's where I've found that it really helps to have a coach.
So is that part of your toolkit to take that transcendence and bring it down and actually make it, inject it into your daily living and this life on Earth?
Yes. And one of the fastest way to do it is to get energy work done on your chakras. Honestly, imagine that psychology already knows that if you start thinking a particular thought and you think it a lot, that this affects the plasticity of your brain and that neural pathways form to support what you're thinking so that next time that subject matter comes up, there's an automatic thought pathway that goes through your mind to support you in whatever it is you already believe. Do you understand what I'm saying? This is known about already in psychology. So
right, you're kind of saying there's a physical, actually, synapse pathway that... and then other times we just say it's kind of like your beliefs are a filter, and you're expecting something. Your preconceptions seem to come true, and they seem to be hiding in every corner. And oh, by golly, there they are again.
That's it. But there is some biology that actually supports us in thinking what we've always thought. The point of me saying this is that in spirituality, there's this principle that says, as above, so below, and as below, so above. So it's called the law of correspondence, which is one of the laws of the soul dimension. Very powerful law. And so just as this plasticity that creates these lines that happen in our brain occur, so it is that meridians, which are non-physical lines of light, emanate from us to other people in accordance with patterns that we've set up as a result of how we've interacted with that person in the past. So to give you an example, if somebody has been in a kind of victim role to someone, maybe their husband or their older sibling or their parent or something, and they're a bit victimized in that relationship, then pretty much whenever they go near that person, all of the meridians and lines of energy coming out of their body to that other person are already set in this interaction is energetically going to feel like I'm a victim. So one of the things you can do with energy healing is you can actually chop off these lines or meridians. You can cut them and set free the old pattern so that you can then be more skillful about creating a new pattern, and you're not pulled back into the old energetic stew that you used to be in. So this is something that we notice is very effective. It's a tool. You literally just cut. You imagine divine grace flooding into your body, and then you imagine that your arm is like a big knife coming down the front of your body, and you cut these meridians with the person you're having a difficult relationship with. And this cutting seems to free up energy in an extraordinary way. And one cannot cut love. So you're never going to jeopardize the relationship by doing this, because love just can't be ever damaged. But what happens is all of the codependent kind of patterns, you can actually cut them away in the energy field, and change is almost immediate when you do that.
Wow, that's amazing, because, well, I think so many other teachings that don't work with Shakti probably are saying experience that codependency, experience that victimhood and stuff, and so instead of running away with it, instead of turning off, and they're talking about inviting it in and somehow open it, bringing it into the party and honoring it too, honoring, thank you for protecting me so long, for being a victim, and then just allowing it to be here without this fear of, and somehow that is doing a kind of surgery in itself, and then you have a kind of a bypass thing where you could just give Shakti pot, or how does it work exactly?
Well, it's a bit of it's probably takes a bit longer than a few minutes to describe it to you, but in short, I think there's two main paths in spirituality, and one path is the transcendent path, where you just rise above your problems, and that when you come back into them, you're in a different mindset. The problem is still there, but you're prepared to deal with it in a way that there's peace inside you. And that's a valid path.
That's very effective, right?
It is very effective, and it's a way that people can be with their spirituality, which is fabulous. What I'm suggesting is that there's a second alternative, and that second alternative is that we discern as best we can what it is that's the divine plan in this instance, and for me that is evolution of consciousness. It's happiness, peace, joyfulness, that we're meant to be creating heaven on earth here, and that we're meant to be co-creating with the divine. And so instead of transcending, coming back, and then just becoming totally at peace with whatever it is and putting up with it, our view is yes, and then change it, so that you actually become an agent for change, because I think the physical world is getting out of balance. I think that a lot of things getting worse. There's districts you can't walk in your cities, as you were saying before. There's lots of things wrong with our education system, our health system. So rather than just putting up with it, my view is that as spiritual aspirants, that as we make real changes within ourselves through all the dimensions of our being, that we are part of the solution of bringing a higher vibration of reality into these things, and that we then become creator beings, that we own our divinity, and we say, look, that divinity is in me as much as it's in you. My feeling is that this is not honoring the spirit the way we run corporations right now. So I'm going to dissolve and disintegrate all the thought forms within inside myself that would hold this Maya in place, Maya being the Buddhist term for how our thoughts create our reality, and I'm going to change it. And so that's what we teach people to do.
Are you going to change it, or are you going to just deconstruct it and let it
No, we're going to
regrow?
change it. No, we're going to change it. And so what we change it to is something that is wide open, so we don't get prescriptive about how the change is going to happen.
There you go, because that's kind of like what I was asking,
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll say things like, we dissolve and disintegrate all thought forms that the hospital system is impersonal, and that people don't respect the humanity of patients in hospitals, which is a problem we have sometimes, occasionally in some of our big public hospitals, because the staff are so taxed, they're so busy, they don't have time to be holding the hand of someone who's in extreme pain. They don't. And so we think that the system is wrong, that those people don't have the time to be compassionate in their work. And it's not that the people themselves probably don't want to be compassionate. They just have 25 more things to do in the next hour, and they can't be. And so we will then put in a thought inside of ourselves that says public hospitals are really compassionate, loving, warm places to be. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's the sort of thing that's never going to hurt anybody to have that view. We never put a thought in that would control anybody else or stop anyone else's free will, if you understand what I'm saying. It's only about, this is what I choose for me. I'm going to choose to create an experience that's of a higher vibration than what I've had before.
So we're holding the space of a potential, and we're not really trying to stop something or plug something, or, the potential is that this is going to work for all in the best way.
That's right. So what we're doing is disintegrating the energy that held in place the old Maya, or the old thought matrix that said, this is what your experience is like if you go to a public hospital. And instead, we're saying, well, look, that might be the physical experience right now, but we're going to start creating something else in the astral field. We're actually going to start creating that it's a sublime and divine experience, and that everybody in a hospital is full of spirit and full of love and full of joy, even though it's such a tricky place to work and a tricky place to be in a hospital. But imagine if enough of us started to do that, how it would change our joint experience. And so I feel that it is a legitimate use of spirituality to be able to do that, and that I do think it's very important as well to come and to live in peace with whatever is happening, and I love that. I'm just saying that for some people, their spiritual path is hotter than that or warmer than that. Mm-hmm. I regard that as a cool path, a cool path meaning I'm not going to get worked up about anything that's happening in my life. I'm just going to stay in a peaceful place. And I think there's a lot of good in that.
Well, but maybe that's the foundation, because if you're able to do that, then you're able to work furiously and not overheat.
Yes, correct. And so then I'm saying we can also learn to use our spirituality to solve some of the most pressing problems that we have in the world right now. My personal belief, and what I've observed clairvoyantly and in meditation, is that our weather patterns are very dependent upon what's happening in the human astral field. And so when we have a lot of people disowning their anger and blaming others and blaming this, that, and the other thing, and getting really frustrated and agitated, and what happens is it creates these massive clouds of energy that is a negative kind of energy, and it clumps together. It starts to clump together. And then the poor little beings that are the elemental beings of fire, earth, air, and water, they kind of run into this clump of garbage that's floating around in the astral field, and it drives them crazy, and they start to really go crazy. And you see it in our weather patterns. You see it in increases in the numbers of tornadoes and hurricanes and the like, and bushfires raging out of control. And I actually believe that if enough people decided that they were going to clean out the human astral field as a service to humanity and clean up the weather elementals, that we could actually bring a better weather pattern back. You cannot control the weather, but you can nudge it in the right direction towards balance, you see.
That's an amazing statement, really. That is totally amazing, and why not? That somehow these elemental substances clog up in these clumped up thought forms, right? And
sure. And you can read teachings similar to this are in the Old Testament of the Bible, where they used to teach that if mankind were naughty and we were all bad people, then there'd be pestilence and floods, and there'd be, that God would smote us with these natural conditions. Well, my reading of that, if you take off the cultural overlay of the time and you just get back to the essence of that teaching, then I think that what it's really saying is that humanity does have an effect upon the natural forces in the world and the weather, and whether there's feast or famine in terms of agricultural necessities. And I think that there's much we can do with that. And I'm very excited about the prospect of working with groups of farmers and other people who are working on the land to help them, because they've got the most invested in this. They're the ones who would have the tenacity to stay with some cleaning and cleansing meditations over a period of time, that to clean out their own thought forms, but also the mess that humanity's made in the astral field. Imagine all the thoughts that all of us think all the time, remnants of them are left in the astral field and affect everybody. And think of the garbage that we think. And even people like us who are trying to be conscious, you still find days when you're just thinking garbage, and, you try and pull yourself up and stop thinking it, but it's hard to do.
So and those are acts of a commission, we're thinking garbage, and we don't even realize it, but we're thinking garbage. But a lot of times we're not even thinking, we have acts of omission too. Now, like we're totally trusting that somehow our world financial system is somehow going to stick together, and that therefore somehow money will have some value, and that hospitals could be financed in a way that we could have something different, and schools could be financed in a way that we could have, and transportation could be financed, and investments in energy could be made, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But if the whole the whole financial system melts down, which if you look at any of the details, it's pretty darn amazing. Like how far out this has gone, and with our acts of omission, basically.
It takes committed people working with a specifically designed meditation tool to change this relatively quickly. And by that I mean maybe in a year or two it could be turned around if you could find enough people who would work consistently on this problem. Then if you understand that everything that happens to us in the world is a reflection of something in the inner landscape, and I believe in the divine as a benevolent force that is trying to get us to be happy and abundant and joyful, and it's our own stuff that keeps getting in the way, and we keep running into all the old problems and all the old karmas and all the old things. And there are ways to clean it up. There are ways we can clean it up. And so people need to get more skillful, and also to believe that they can do it. And, we're living proof that you can, in a small way at the moment. But we'll be coming to America next year. We'll be in New York in May. And perhaps then we'll be able to explain more fully and give people an experience of what we're talking about. Because quite often just one of these meditations is sufficient to bring about considerable change in a person's life. It does not take a long time when you use your soul to help change the world.
So then, okay, here's a question for you. It just popped in my mind, that because so many times we say that we need a body, really, in order to advance, or somehow to experience, and somehow to really see. Because somehow our soul might be live in truth, but somehow it doesn't know it. Or, we say things like that anyhow. And so then we're talking about the energy system in the body as a reflection of what's in the weather, and what's on the earth, and what's in the the magnetic fields, and who knows, the solar system. And so then we're giving you've got some spiritual tools, and also do energy work on basically individual bodies, right, that you can open chakras.
Sure.
And I wanted to ask, like, can you give energy work? Can you do Shaktipat to a mountain? Can you do Shaktipat to a sick river? Can you do Shaktipat to a sick financial system? Can you do Shaktipat to the national debt? Or do you only do it through all the individuals that would be under the umbrella of that national debt?
We do it through the individuals, but we are combining our efforts to work on that problem. So, for instance, when the GFC first broke, was it back in 2008, I think, that the whole global financial system looked like it was about to fall to bits, we immediately created a meditation tool that is about a 45-minute spiritual practice to create that it's not affecting us. And the city that we live in was totally unaffected by the GFC. And Australia actually went very well in the GFC. And we had hundreds of people meditating here directly on that. Now, other things happened. Our government responded, blah, blah, blah. But I still believe that some of the way that we weathered that problem was because of the number of people that were meditating in a way that they had knowledge of what they were doing. They were educated in the way that they were meditating and using the tools that we have in Shanti Mission to help change that situation. So it's just getting enough people to try it and to and to do the practices, you know, for maybe to change something that massive, it's not going to just happen the first time you use the meditation CD. And to get groups of people meditating together, that the GFC is going to miraculously turn around. Miracles do happen. The age of miracles is not dead, as some would say it is. It's only because we keep negating the soul and negating the reality of any kind of divine presence that we can experience, that we don't have miracles in our life. But once you open that floodgate back up again, it's extraordinary what can happen. And, you know, I really look forward to gaining the attention of some of the people who are working in government circles or working in the financial fields, and training them about how they can be part of the solution, not only in terms of what their career focus is, but in terms of what their soul is doing and what their own personal astral field is doing. Here in Australia, we also have issues with pollution and needing to educate people about looking after the environment and so forth. And I'm sure that would be a problem that you have there too. And a lot of people become very animatedly anti and against this and against that and fighting this and fighting that. In my experience, this actually adds energy to the problem, because the focus is on what we don't want. And more energy is added to that.
Well, it's blocking the energy flow, right? Because, I mean, when you're against something, you're holding.
Yeah. So what we help people to do is to become empowered as peace workers, as global, you know, green peace workers. And so we teach them how it is that by holding a positive attitude towards what could be and holding a vision, people have forgotten how to hold a vision. So we train them, how do you hold a vision? And then how do you wipe out all the thought forms that are within my own being that would interfere with that vision becoming realized? And this is something that is like a science. You can learn how to do it. You can do it yourself. You can teach other people to do it. And I'm hoping that lots and lots of people will learn, so that people power can get out there in a very peaceful way, based on meditation and based on energetic healing, that we will create changes in the world.
In one sense, it sounds, you know, that I want to jump to working on what's fundamental in this moment, which might be Greece and Italy, you know, the Euro problem, and Spain and stuff like this, you know. But on another sense, you might want to just work in your local community and make a beta test, like show that this really does make a difference, you know. Yeah,
I would encourage people to work on what is important to them. What have they got an emotional attachment to? That's the best thing to start working on. My experience has shown that when we don't have a connection to something in an emotional way, then it's very difficult to have the tenacity that it takes to be the right people to be working on that problem. So what you were saying about working on the economies of, say, Greece, for instance, well, really it would be great to train Greek people to do that, because they're the ones that have the love of their culture and their country, and may have the tenacity to just keep doing this meditation despite what it might look like in the world, to do it with full faith and spiritual empowerment. See what I mean? One cannot help someone who hasn't really asked for the help, in the sense of a guru can't just bless people with whom they have no connection at all and expect that miraculous things will happen. It's actually the connection of love that exists between a guru and disciple, or a guru and student, that allows for the energy of the guru to pass to the student in such a way that miracles can happen by the rapid change in vibration that the student experiences. So if there is no connection, then that can't happen. And in the Bible, Jesus said, you know, I'm the way, and if you believe in me, you know, you'll go to heaven, or whatever it was he said. And that's because he was trying to teach this principle that I'm saying now, that if there's no connection, you can't help them. So if you believe in them, if you have faith in them, if you love them, you can help them. So that's, you know, it's a reality. It's a spiritual law. It's the law of faith. So we have to work with these laws and start to understand them and know that they're real, and work with them instead of against them. So if we work on the laws of the soul, as well as our mind, as well as our energy field, as well as trying to be love on legs in the things that we do in our physical world, and we invite the divine to the party and say, help us, you know, then it's amazing what you can do. But for me, I've always found that you need to work on all 5 levels at once. And that's what we train people to do.
I really, really, really admire what you're saying and really resonate with it. And and even though, like, the foundation might be the transcendence we talked about, so that we can really have the energy and not be wasting it on just feeling tight and bad and doomed. Once we release that, we have the energy to do all the rest, and I think it's a natural outcome of it.
Yes. Yeah.
We talked about so much because maybe we didn't really go into the feeling of it or the felt sense of it so much because there was so much to talk about. But it's something that I really want to further investigate, and hopefully maybe
I hope
at the Bodhi Fest or something like that,
sure,
we could maybe
you'll have many experiences
continue.
At the Bodhi Festival. Yeah, you can experience the healing I'm talking about. And we do it en masse too. We have a thing called satsang, where we have hundreds of people gathering together for meditation, and we do the same. We get everybody doing it together. It's very empowering for everyone who attends. So you'll get an experience of that when you come to our Bodhi Festival.
What is Diksha? Is that something like Shaktipat, but just given by a trained person, but not necessarily a guru? Or
well, Diksha is traditionally given by a guru, and it's a special blessing that raises the Kundalini. So for me, it's another word for Shaktipat. It's just a different terminology.
So it's really exciting to be transcendent, but also be practical to human pain and human suffering and human injustice. And I don't know, that feels like it's really what we're here for.
Yeah, well, it's the law of compassion, so that's another of the laws. So we're here to do what we can to make things better for others, as well as to live a good life ourselves. So when we live in accordance with the laws, happiness is the result. When we don't live in accordance with the laws, frustration is the result. So you're feeling the law of compassion at the moment, and it's making your heart sing.
Yeah, and that's another thing I really, really appreciate, is that you're making it so clear. You just feel it, it's not all that mystical.
No.
It shows up in the bottom world, in the physical world.
Yeah.
And so then
it shouldn't have to be too complex, Spirituality is simple. It doesn't mean that it's easy, but it's simple and it's clear.
Yes. I really thank you for such a clear message.
Namaste.
And a clear dream of how life can be different.
Yeah. Let's make it happen, hey?
Yes. Shri Guru Shakti Durga. Thank you.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, everybody, for coming and watching our little taste of Australia. And so we're going to try to go to Sydney and get firsthand knowledge of everything we've talked about. And in the meantime, I don't know, I guess we could just pray the way we know how to pray for what's happening in our world, and for our ability to respect that, and right, just to know that there's a space where it can work for everyone.
Great.
So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Pleasure to talk to you.